Okay, so the purpose of this meeting is just to showcase the ways of working where I'm coming from, the experience that I have within the field of CI&CD, but very importantly, hand in hand with auto-version and version bumping of your artifacts. I would be showcasing within the context of GitFlow, but GitFlow is not required, and I'll explain that a bit later. So just for everyone to evaluate how I'm coming about doing certain things, and then whether it might suit them, whether it's something they want to adopt later on. Okay, cool. So the agenda is quite straightforward. I'm going to quickly discuss what is semantic versioning. Most people are very familiar with that. Next, what is GitFlow? After that, GitVersion, which goes hand in hand with those two. Quickly just showcasing what settings you need on your repo to support GitFlow to its best ability. Adding GitVersion to a C# or a PowerShell script, what that looks like. Then I'll showcase how that goes hand in hand with DevOps together with the CI&CD route after you make your commits to the specific repo to generate or to generate your specific artifacts, regardless of what you're actually building. I'll show the auto-versioning, how the auto-bumping actually happens. And then lastly, just quickly, how do I do an unofficial release? Some of you might be familiar with these processes, but let's quickly get started. I want to close everything because for demonstration purposes, we will start Googling everything that we need. First, what is semantic versioning? Semantic versioning, the first one, SemVer.org. Most people are familiar with this, basically, and is by far one of the most popular versioning schemes out there for versioning your artifacts, regardless of what it is. If it's a DLL, if it's an API, if it's a APK for Android device, it doesn't matter whether it's a actual image. That's irrelevant. We are talking about versioning any form of software. Cool. Basically, you can split this number into 3 sections. The major section is normally when you break backwards compatibility, such as you change your signature of your API, your signature of your DLL, you jump from one version of Angular to another version, stuff breaks, and it's not really backwards compatible. You normally bump this. If you look at how Microsoft, for instance, versions their Visual Studios, for instance, the latest one, 2022, is version 17. It's not compatible with the previous version 16, and hence they bumped this version. It's a brand new release, it's a brand new piece of software, and it's not backwards compatible at all. Cool. The modern one in the middle here, I normally call this the feature number. Every time we want to push features to our production branch, you'll normally bump this one. It works out quite well if you do this per sprint. Sometimes you can do multiple releases in the middle of the sprint. If something is ready, something is shipped, and the clients are waiting for it, quite importantly. So we normally do this for features, and the way they specify it is add functionality which does not break backwards compatibility. So in other words, you're adding stuff, but it's still very much compatible with the previous version. Okay, cool. And then lastly, the patch, I refer to this one as the patch version. Obviously, as you're creating hotfixes and patching this particular version in question, you normally bump this guy here. And then I just want to pinpoint 2 very important things that's part of the specification of SemVer, which is very important. Once a version package has been released, the content of that version must not be modified. Any modification must be released with a new version. This is vitally important. I'll touch base on this later. If you kick off a build over and over and over, the same commit, you may not change version numbers. It needs to be the same. In any given point in time, when you kick off that same build for a certain branch, for a certain commit, it should always kick out the same result. If by any chance your CI&CD is not doing that, you are breaking this rule. And I'll show you guys how I get around that, how I make sure I stay within those lines for your own protection. Okay, so this is a semantic versioning. Everyone is quite familiar with that. Next, what is GitFlow? GitFlow is a Git branching strategy. I'm literally just going to explain this entire thing using a picture. One of the ones I use the most, this guy here. So basically, the way they define it, and obviously, the namings and which branch you want to use for what is completely configurable, and you can change it. But off the bat, as default as it comes, it's as follows. Your production branch is your master branch. That's the guy that will hit your production environments, and your clients will, your end users will actually play with that. Not necessarily your QA teams, unless you want a prod replica of that environment. But normally, this is the branch, and also you do tagging on that branch that's going to hit your prod environment. If you want to change anything on prod, depending on which client is on which version, you would hotfix it. You fix it, you send it back into prod, and your patch, the last number, would have been bumped. That's what hotfixes would do. The same fix will go into develop, where it might not even be applicable anymore. It might be a merge conflict. That bug might have been fixed already. It doesn't matter. At least the developer can sort that out. It might not be relevant to go back here. That's his job to sort that out. Whoops. I should not have clicked that. Oh, this is not bad. This is bigger. Okay, cool.
Gavin, can I ask a question there just for explanation, and maybe I missed it?
Go ahead.
So the idea is that the master branch becomes the release branch from where we release stuff, and not a branching strategy like we do currently for every release. Is that what's indicated here?
That is how GitFlows work.
I don't want to open up an argument about this topic until Gavin is done. I was just curious. So this flows indicate that from the master, you do the hotfix, you push it back into master, and you label that, and you release from a label and not a branch. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, exactly. That's how GitFlow off the bat. And I'm actually going to showcase that flow of creating a hotfix on a particular version. We can pick whichever version you want to do that. And yes, as you can see, it goes back into there. Develop branch, as the name suggests, that's where all the development happens. That's where your alpha artifacts, your suffix alpha gets added to your artifacts, because it's unstable and it's not yet ready for prod. In order to get anything from your alpha branch, from your develop branch, into your production branch, you will have to do a release candidate. So release slash, and you do semantic versioning. So release slash, and you're going to say this was 1.0.0. You may on here you may do commits. You can change release nodes. You may do PRs into this release in order to fix certain things, to push certain things. Let's say another feature came in, I quickly want to get that in. This guy may live for like a week, for instance. You can send this you can release the entire release branch to QA. Let them go test it before we even finish the release. And I'll showcase this as well. Once you finish the release, it goes into master, goes into your prod branch. It gets tagged with the same name as that release, easy peasy. And it also goes back into develop automatically using GitFlow, just to make sure if you did change something, both sources of truth, both prod and your alpha, is aware of it, your develop branch. Cool. And then lastly, features. As we're busy deving as developers, you literally branch off of your develop branch, you do your feature, and Bob Shankle, you get it back. One of the counter arguments for GitFlow is, which people hate GitFlow, is they say what screws them is people leave the branches, like these feature branches, too long. They live too long. But that's not really an argument. That's just bad. That's just bad practice. These should never live too long. If you're working on a feature for 3 days, theoretically you should be able to break it down at least into 3 PRs each step and each day, and not live with a feature for 3 weeks.
I like that.
That will screw you. So you must avoid that. You must always PR in small chunks so your teammates can check out what you're busy doing, because this guy cannot live there, because the merge conflicts, and you will really screw everyone else if you are doing that.
You can only do that strategy if you know that the PR that you're doing is releasable.
Not necessarily. Hear me out.
Okay.
Hear me out. If you're releasing, let's say at the end of each sprint, let's say your sprint is 3 weeks long, you can PR, especially if you know what it doesn't have to be complete. It might be even modular and even turned off with feature flags, but you may easily get into here, and it might be released at the end of the sprint, but it might not be complete. And it's as simple as making sure once you hit that release, just turning off with a feature flag, and Bob Shankle prod might have some of the code, let's say 10% of the code for the next sprint's work, but it's turned off and not necessarily stable in that regard. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but it really depends on what your scenario is. Some scenarios will work multi-tenancy change would not have worked. You probably won't know the context, but I can explain that offline with you. There's reasons and not reasons to do that thing, but I guess it depends on the scenario.
It does sound like a bit of an edge case, but yeah, I'm talking about everyday use. We have not found issues with this approach, but yours does sound like an edge case. And let me just guess, that took more than 3 weeks of deving, what you're referring to?
More than 3 months.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Edge case, that sounds like a hard fork. You literally forked off your repo. You should have. You should not. You're not even the same same software anymore. You should have forked hard and bumped that first number of semantic versioning because you are breaking backwards compatibility completely. Next on the agenda, so GitFlow covered. What is GitVersion? Now GitVersion, this is the heart. I implement this on every single project. It doesn't matter about the stack. I've been using this for the last 3 years, and this thing is amazing. Check it out. GitVersion is a tool that generates semantic version numbers based on your Git history. The version number generates from GitVersion can then be used for various different purposes, such as stamping your artifacts and so forth, blah, blah, blah. But what's like really cool about this is it automatically does it for you based on your tags in your Git repo. As a developer, I want to be lazy. I want certain things automated because I don't have to worry about that and rather focus on stuff that matters like business logic versus worrying about what my software is going to look like once it's versioned. And this guy, man, oh man, this guy really does it for you. I'm going to showcase that now. Just 2 quick points. This documentation actually changed. A year ago, it literally said this goes hand in hand with your repo following GitFlow. They have, in fact, changed that now because now it's so configurable, you don't even have to follow GitFlow. You just define where's your prod branch, where's your develop branch, and it can automatically do the calculations for you for the bumping. Cool. They have a few integrations options into CI. CI specifically, they support Azure DevOps and also GitHub. So Azure DevOps does have an end-of-life support in the next 10 years. And the good news is they're already on here. They're already in GitHub, which Microsoft also bought. So if Microsoft owns both of these, it should be quite easy for us to move over to this guy in 10 years' time, which is really, and also GitLab. I don't use GitLab though, but it should be quite easy to move that across. And another discussion I had the other day with Francois was because Microsoft owns both these companies, it should be quite easy for us to take our YAML and move over to this guy with the least amount of headaches, which will be pretty sweet once we have obviously your pipeline specified in a YAML format. Cool. I'll also demo the command line. They have a command line interface which runs on Linux now, which is really freaking sweet. Half a year ago, it wasn't working on Linux yet. They do support Linux now. This is an open source project, by the way. Anyone can contribute if they want to. It's really, really cool. You can go nuts if you want to. One thing we are missing, if anyone is eager to jump on some open source code, we definitely need a npm package. FYI, I'm just putting that out there. Lastly, you can also integrate with MS Build to automatically bump your versions of your DLLs in the C# space as you're building. This is specifically to C#. The library, not supported anymore. I've never used that, so we can ignore that. How it works, intro, Git setup, why use GitVersion. There was this one important point. There you go. This one. I just want to re-emphasize this before I move on. Rebuilding the tag always produces the same version. Like, in other words, if you pick a specific commit in your Git history, if you rebuild that over and over and over, you may never have a different version. It must always be the same version. And that is the rule you need to stick to. And once you stick to those rules are in place by semantic versioning to protect you. Because if you do it the other way around, you'll really get screwed trying to debug what is going on. One of the biggest reasons why I found GitVersion way back when is I had a use case. I have my server still open here, where I had this service which I would deploy to my clients. And at any given point in time, I needed to know what version of my service is running. Sure, you can have an endpoint and you can ask the endpoint, tell me about yourself, and you get the semantic version. But that doesn't stop another developer from coming and injecting his own damn DLL, and you don't know where that DLL came from. And the cool thing about semantic versioning, if you see, I added Git file version and product version to my Explorer, and it shows you the semantic version in that column, and also tells you exactly which branch and which Git commit this is coming from. So there's no debating where this DLL came from, which commit it came from, which helps a lot. Obviously, when you get to release, you want all of these to match up. If you have multiple repos, at the end of your sprint, when you want to do a release, you need to release all your repos at once to resync all the versions. And I'll touch base on that. If I don't remember to do it, please remind me, and I'll show you guys how you resync all your versions across all your repos at the point of release. But during the sprint, you don't have to. During the sprint, they can go out of sync a bit. One can be on alpha plus 10, the other one can be on alpha plus 100. Let's say the UI has more commits than the backend. Who cares? In the alpha space, on the developer environment, doesn't matter. But as soon as you're going to go to prod, it's time to sync those guys up. And I'll show you guys how to do that. If I don't, please remind me. Cool. The next on the agenda is just quickly, if you want GitFlow on your repo, there's just 1 or 2 settings you want to do. I will demonstrate on Bitbucket, but it should be very similar to most repos out there, Git repos. All you need to do is define your main branch, change this from master to develop, which means when developers check out the code, they will be on the develop branch. When they do PRs, they automatically want a PR to develop branch. That's your develop branch. That's how you want it to act. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. And then one more thing you want to change as well. Branch model. Branch model, you also want to just say, well, that's your main one, which I just explained for developers' purposes, but also, where's your prod branch? What is your prod branch? Just define that guy as the master branch. I'm just doing this now in the view of how GitFlow works. Remember? Prod branch and your dev branch. Sweet. Moving on. Let's add GitVersion to C#. So it's really, really easy. Not that one. That one expired. I just quickly created a small command line interface application. I have some features that I was testing with. I have some, let's just say this was a junior developer, did some poop code, which we'll fix a bit later with the hotfix. And how this guy works, let's see. Oh, clicked on the wrong one again. Let's just rebuild this guy. Let's just quickly look at where I am at right now. You don't have to worry about where I came from. I'll show you how we're going to move forward. So as you can see, I'm on master. The master is tagged with version 0.3. Happy days. If I'm on master right now, if I rebuild this, wait for the build, look what happens to my, and I already explained this, to these two fields. If you right click on the DLL or the exe, you can also go interrogate those values. But basically, your DLL, your artifact, that's in the C# space, gets automatically tagged. And also, like I mentioned as well, which commit did it come from? How I achieve this is, if you remember the integration options of GitVersion, I used this guy here, the MS build. You don't have to use this one. This is just for demonstration purposes, because you have to add a new NuGet package for that. I keep clicking that. Sorry, let me just quickly unpin that. Else I'm going to keep clicking like a crazy person. How I achieve that is quite simple. Added a brand new package. Let's just re-show this. Add a NuGet package. I added the MS build one. Let me search GitFlow. Let me show you GitVersion and show you all the other options. This used to be the first one. This is not being used anymore. If you read the documentation, it will say it's depreciated, not supported anymore. This is also the icon we used to have in DevOps. We don't use this anymore. Come on, where's the README now? Load. There you go. Legacy no longer maintained. Don't use this guy. Where the magic is happening is between these guys. In fact, look at that. 10 million downloads. 10.5 million downloads. This is the one I'm going to show in PowerShell. But this is the one I quickly added just for tagging my artifacts without me getting involved. Automatically just tagging these artifacts here, which is pretty sweet. Another option is this guy here, GitVersion tool. You can do it as a NuGet package, or you can simply do it according to documentation, command line. Check this guy out. You just need to install a global package, install the global tool, GitVersion, GitVersion.tool. I have already installed that. And what's important I want to show you guys is once it's installed, let me talk to its command line interface. And this is what you get. This entire JSON object. You have access. I don't know if any of you guys ever used JSON in PowerShell, but it's pretty OP. Once you cast this guy to object, you can interrogate and talk to this object like it's a first class object-oriented language, which is really freaking sweet. And then you can do stuff like object.mySemVersion. This is by far the guy we're going to use the most. As you can see, We are on the master branch right now because GitVersion interrogates my Git history. It knows which branch I'm on. Happy days.
Can you just maximize that or make it a little bit bigger, please?
No problem.
Thank you.
There you go. As I was saying, this guy here, because it knows I'm on master branch and master was tagged with this version. Check it out. I'm tagged there. There's my tag, my price tag. That's the icon they chose on in this client of mine, my Git client source tree. But anywho, I'm not going to judge. They tagged with that. That's why I have this version. That's why if I rebuild my DLLs over and over and over, I'm going to just rebuild. I can't emphasize this more. Rebuild again. I rebuilt it twice now. This versions don't change. They are staying the same. I'm on the same commit. Cool.
It's just a question. How do they choose which tag to use on the branch? Because remember, you can tag any commit for something, right?
Yes, you can.
For any other reason, right? Not just for versioning purposes. So how would they decide, listen, this is the version that is actually the tag that they need to use for the latest version?
Okay. So there is a strategy for it. Let me draw it quickly. Snippy tools. So let's say I was on master, which is I was on this point here. I send this off to CI, my DevOps environment, and tell it to build it. What it will do is, because I'm just using the standard GitFlow configuration, I haven't changed the configuration, it knows my master is my prod branch. Everything gets calculated based off where your prod branch is. Because I'm already on prod, it will ask, do I have a tag here? Oh, I do have a tag. If you have multiple semantic tags, you shouldn't have it, but let's say you do. It will pick the highest one. Let's say I had 1.2 and 1.3. It will pick the highest one. But it needs to be spelled like that without the V. You may not have the V there. It must be a semantic version. And they will pick the latest one.
So if I were to specify something else that is not a semantic version tag, for argument's sake, we've used tags in the past like, okay, pre a certain major change and post a major change so that we can know where in the commit that specific, in the trunk, that specific change was introduced. Not necessarily a version, we just want to know what commit this final feature went in. So if it's not semantic, just plain text, well, it won't affect this, right?
No, it shouldn't. I believe it's just going to completely ignore those. It's going to look at strings it can actually cast. So in other words, a string it can divide into 3 pieces, and all 3 pieces, all 3 sections is numbers, and then we'll use those for calculations. If your tag doesn't adhere to those guidance, I'm not sure if you can see my mouse, but if your tag doesn't conform to that standard, it's just simply going to ignore it.
Fair enough.
Cool. Good question. So going forward, that's how this guy's working, tagging this automatically, and obviously I showed this one. And then once you have integration to GitVersion in your CI space, you have access to all these variables, which is really cool. Primarily, I've only used this one. I've tagged my front ends, my back ends, microservices, images, you name it. I tag everything. Even Android APKs, I've tagged with this guy. It just works amazing. I'll show you guys some examples of how I do the tagging. Simple string manipulation, because it's an environment variable. But anywho, that's how this guy works. And then, this is supposed to be at the back of the demo, how the auto bumping works. But let me show you. I'm going to jump to develop. So what happened? Yes, if you look back at the picture, I was here at this commit, for instance. I'm jumping to develop. In other words, I'm ahead of master now. So what it does is, which is really cool. In fact, I'm going to ask you guys, if I jump here, what do you guys think my version number is going to be? Anyone? I jumped from 0.3.0 to this one. What do you guys think my version number is going to be if I rebuild the C# application quickly? Or even run this PowerShell?
Well, it should be the same, right? Because you haven't changed anything.
No, that is the wrong answer. Check it out. I'm going to run this again. Remember now, I changed to develop branch. And look what happens. It automatically bumped the feature number to 4. Because, sure, you actually did change something. You have a commit that chronologically is behind or ahead of master. See, I'm one ahead. So automatically it says, I know this is my develop branch. I know I'm always ahead of master. And because I'm ahead of master, I'm automatically bumping that middle number for you. So I'm on feature 4. Okay.
But how does it decide whether it's major, minor, or bug fix?
That's on the tags. So automatically coming from master, back to this picture, coming from master, it always knows I'm doing features. If you can force it, we're going to do that now. Let's actually force a major change. Let's say we're breaking backwards compatibility, or remember one of the other rules about semantic versioning, which I didn't mention, is actually the line I was looking for, is when you hit prod, you may not have versions like this. You have to start with 1. As soon as you hit a prod environment, you're going to be client-facing. Regardless of whatever software you're doing, this has to become a 1. It has to. You may not have zeros in prod. Let's do that now. So I already explained how it became 4 because I'm ahead of master. But let's say I'm going to break backwards compatibility quickly. So quite easy. As a developer, I quickly want to do a new feature. What I'm going to do I'm going to break stuff. Let's break some stuff. This is just a nice way of doing it. You don't have to obviously use this this client. You can do it through your terminal itself, but it's the same thing. I'm breaking some stuff. Let's break some stuff. Whoops, sorry, I opened the wrong thing there. Let's say I put feature 2. Now this is obviously a very simple example, but I'm putting feature 2 in front of feature 1. That's not right, for argument's sake. I'm breaking backwards compatibility. That should never have run before this. Cool. I'm going to commit this. Why am I breaking this? Actually, let's change it. We're getting prod ready. Prod ready code. For some reason, someone thought this is a good idea. Let's do it. We're going to release this. That's my commit message. As you can see, I'm on my feature branch now. And I'm just going to finish this. So essentially back to the picture, what I'm doing is I branched off. I made my commit. I'm doing stuff now, and I quickly want to finish my feature. I want to end up back and develop. And this is all automatic using GitFlow. I want to finish my release now. I've done all my code. Force delete because I want to get rid of that branch. I don't want that to live on my machine anymore. Stand by. Okay, I've went back into dev, and my client already automatically moved me over to the develop branch. Because I'm a developer, this is where I want to be. This is my main branch for my repo. Okay, cool. We have not released yet, but just for interest's sake, run this command again, or I could have built the DLLs. I'm still on version 4, but this number would have changed. Let me zoom up a bit. As you can see, I used to be on alpha 6. Now I'm alpha 7. What this basically means is there is a additional commit ahead of, I'm different ahead of my master, my prod branch. And I'll show you how this links up now if I go back into master. Cool, I'm happy. Actually, I never pushed. I should push this because I also want to show you guys how this works. I have my pipeline set up and automatic kickoff as we're mucking around, yeah? We want to release now. Now I'm going to show you how to do a release quickly. The release, you don't have to do it at the head of develop. You may release earlier, by the way. You don't have to be at the head. Sorry. You don't have to be at the head of develop. You can be a bit earlier. Let's say some other people are doing other features you don't want to release. You may jump back and release from there instead. That's quite simple. You guys know. Just jump on that branch where you want to be and move off of that, branch off of that. At the moment, I'm just going to take the head. I'm happy with the head. I want this to go out. So let's go do this. Let's create a brand new release. Now this is where it becomes important. The reason why I'm sticking to semantic versioning here is the same name of this branch is going to be used for the tagging later on because I'm going to use GitFlow to finish off it for me. You don't have to do it. You can do the tagging yourself manually. But if you don't call this semantic, it's going to, whatever you call there, it's going to tag it with it. You don't want Hong Kong tags in there. You may, and you can move this responsibility away from another process, but just for demonstration purposes and for ease of use, I'm going to keep to the semantic. So we're pumping the first number. We're going prod ready. We are code. We want our clients to see this code now. Let's quickly get this guy going. it created that release. I'm happy with the release. I'm not even going to change release notes or anything like that. I'm not going to do any PRs into it. I'm happy. QA test team has tested it. Let's finish this release. Force delete, push changes to remote. Sure, get rid of that, blah, blah, blah. Send that all off. And now, if I, after this process, so remember on the picture, we're doing this now. We are finishing the release. It should go into both branches. Both master and develop should be aware if you change anything. In develop's case, nothing changed, but it will go back into both. Both will have brand new IDs. And if, as you can see, my client automatically moved me to develop, but if I quickly jump back to master, see, I'm on master now, run PowerShell again, or just to prove this, I run this, the other integration, have a look at my DLLs. There you go. I've done a major release, easy peasy lemon squeezy. I'm going to ask the same question again. If I jump to master now and I rebuild my DLLs, what's my version going to be? Jump to develop, rebuild my DLLs. What's my version going to be?
Develop. Well, it's going to probably going to make it 1.1.
Exactly.
It thinks it's going to be 1.1, but who says it's just a patch?
You don't do patches on develop. I'll show you now how we're going to do a hotfix. We're going to do a hotfix because remember some developer left poop in there which we're going to nuke. But that's a really good question. I'll do a hotfix now. But yeah, you are completely right. As you can see, it bumped it to 1. I'm on the feature branch. I'm ahead of master. I know the next number after 0 is 1. Happy days. I'm nuking that. I'm committing to this. Where the beauty really comes in. Let me jump to DevOps. Whatever I'm showing here with both the PowerShell command and also the MS build, it goes hand in hand with the plugin on, this is the wrong project. It goes hand in hand with the plugin on GitFlow itself. So everything we just said now, we should have kicked off a bunch of builds. Check it out. Actually, it was not ready. It wasn't happy with that, but regardless, in fact, it broke. You can see it's even the way it works is it actually overrides your build ID to semantic versions. It gets rid of this because the standard that Microsoft has, it's not semantic version, so they nuke that completely. They override that with the semantics, and check this out, semantic versioning. So we got into, our code was merged into develop with this tag. Remember when it jumped to 4? This one, yeah, remember, back to the picture. It goes to master and it goes into develop. As you can see, based on this, when develop kicked off, it automatically bumped that number, which Francois, you just pointed out. Happy days. That is where I'm at as a develop branch. I'm already bumping my feature number. Cool. And then this guy, it's still the old version, the way Microsoft does it. It will change as soon as it gets past the first 2 stages, the setting up of the GitVersion, which is the exact same command. Let me show you. It's literally this integration, yeah? The CMD. Come on, CMD. Installation, it's installing this global package. It's the first one. You also specify which version of the package you want. It needs to get past that. Oops. And then lastly, it executes it in case if you want to pass your own custom configuration in. If you want to change, my branches live elsewhere. So it has to get past these 2 quickly. And then I'll update this number and I'll show you now. As soon as it's passed there, now if I go back, and as you can see, production code from the master branch is a pure number, not feature 1, because feature 1 belongs to develop right now in the meantime. Okay, just to quickly demonstrate how a hotfix would work, how to patch, in other words, the head of master. The repo has changed the meter. I had to come back just to do this recording. But basically, this is how it will work. So if we want to patch master, you're on a particular version, let's say, obviously the head. So we're going to patch the head right here. If you, in order to patch that, in order to fix something on production, you have to come from there, create a hotfix, come from master, create a hotfix, like here's a historical view of how it happened in the past. You come from master, you fix something, and then you finish that hotfix, and it ends up in both your prod branch and also your develop branch. So I'm going to be demoing that. Let's quickly familiarize ourselves with where my repo is right now. As you can see, master is on 1.2.0. And my dev branch is just one commit ahead of it after the fact, after I did something else in the past when I released the feature. Quickly have a look at DevOps itself. Let's have a look. As you can see, my develop is on 1.3. Remember, develop will automatically bump the model number when you when your master, so if my master is on 1.2, it will automatically bump the model number because it knows it's always ahead of its prod branch, and it knows that it always needs to contain features, and hence when this guy ever wants to get into master, it kind of gives you the number, predicts what your next number is going to be, which is really cool. And as you can see, my master is in fact 1.2.0. It's a pure number because that's what master was tagged with. If you have a look there, 1.2.0. Okay, cool. Let's patch prod. Since prod is on 1.2.0, we know that the next version number will be 1.2.1. We're going to bump the last number. It's 0 right now. We're going to bump it to 1. So let's do it. We want to create a new hotfix. What are we going to call it? 1.2.1. So just quickly explain what I'm doing here. You don't have to also use semantic versioning for your branch names. This is my branch name now. However, when you finish the hotfix, it's going to tag your master once it goes into master with that. If you look what happened here in the past, when I finished this was actually a release though, but when I finished that release, when it hit master, it also tagged it automatically for me. So I want this tag to end up on master for me once this guy's fixed. You don't have to do that. It will just tag it with whatever you write here. However, you just have to, after the fact, then go right click and add a tag to master and then re-kick off the builds for GitVersion to know about it. But that's not train smash, so this is what I'm doing. So I'm coming off of, it was very important, I'm coming off of master. I'm not different from master yet, that's all on the same lane right now. The drop down on that previous screen also showed I'm coming from master, which is correct. Remember this one here? In order to create a hotfix, I need to come from master. Sweet. Now I'm there. Let's fix something quickly. Let's just remove the exclamation. That was never supposed to be in prod. For argument's sake, uncommit the changes. Let's quickly commit that. Remove. Actually, fix bug 1, 2, 3. In order to do that, I fix the bug. Commit. Okay. Now that there's actually a change on it, I want to quickly push this over. I want to finish it. Finish hotfix. Delete the thing, push it to remote. I don't want anything left on my machine. And as developer, I want to jump back to develop. I also always want to be on my main branch of my repo. While that's going, let's quickly recap what's happening right now. I was here, I made some changes, I'm finishing it now. So I wanted to go into my prod branch, obviously. I wanted to tag it, obviously. And then also needs to go into dev. So dev also needs to be aware of that change. You can't have these two out of sync. They should always know about one another. Okay. Well, let me actually go to fix that. Let me just explain that statement. They should know about each other in the sense where there might be code on both sides. However, develop can always be ahead of master, obviously. There's always features coming in here, like these blue lines coming in. And eventually, master will know about it. Eventually, we'll get into master through a release. But this one can deviate. But like hotfixes, releases, they should merge to sync both branches up again. Okay, so let's have a look what happened here. There's our bug. We came from master, remember? We came from master, we fixed something, we finished the hotfix. It went directly into master and it tagged master for us, 1.2.1. It patched it, happy days. And it also went into develop branch. Cool. Let's go have a look at what the version numbers happened, what the version numbers got predicted on Azure DevOps using GitVersion. Let's jump into what's his face, Azure DevOps. Let's refresh quickly. Okay, let's have a look. One of the first things I did was I created that hotfix. notice the beta tag. So where beta comes into play is whenever you are one stage away from prod. So in other words, if I am on a hotfix or if I'm in a release, this is where your betas come in. Your alphas lives on this orange line here. Your betas, suffixes for your versioning, lives on these two here. You're one stage away from hitting prod. You can ship that off to your beta environment, your QA environment, in order to do final testing before she can hit prod, if that's the way you want to do it. Cool. So that's where beta came from. Take note as well, it's aware of the patch. This patch here, I believe, this was predicted because it knows my master was on patch 0, not yet patched. It's predicting, oh, I'm doing hotfixes. Oh, I came from 0, and hence that's why I'm predicting this guy here. My next number will be this. Cool. And then remember, we finished this hotfix. It went into both develop and master. So what happened at master? Pretty straightforward. Master was tagged with that version. Before the build kicked off, it's aware of that. It knows, oh, this is where I'm at. And it tagged it. It's a pure number, 1.2.1. It's patch 1, happy days. And then what happened on master? Master remained. Sorry, what happened on develop? Develop remained on 1.3. If you look at here, it's also 1.3. Because the master's feature hasn't changed yet. Master's still on 1.2. On feature 2, if you have a look here, on feature 2. And previous master on feature 2. So the middle number would not have changed on develop. It's still on feature 3, which is one feature ahead, because develop is for features. Depending if you want to put one single feature, multiple features after a sprint, doesn't matter. But the next feature is still 3, so that hasn't bumped. However, what has changed between this dev and this dev, if you notice at this dev here and this dev here, if you notice at the end, this used to be alpha 5, alpha 8, which simply tells you, okay, I've deviated a bit even further away from my prod branch. I used to be deviated 5 away from my prod branch, but now I'm even deviated even further. I'm deviated 8 commits, 8 history. There's a certain way I'll calculate that, but I'm deviated even further away from my prod branch. But eventually, when we release this guy, do a release, she will match up again. She'll go back to 0. But right now, I'm deviated. And that is just to demonstrate to you guys how a hotfix works and how to get a hotfix out into your prod branch. Cool. So that is that. And then quickly, just to wrap all of this up, I showed you the auto version bumping. I showed you how this fits together, but where does it fit into CD? So this is CI. We continuous integrator. We can run our unit tests and all that. And we even zip our artifacts. If you look at here quickly, I did add the step to zip my artifacts. Inside here is the entire command line interface, the command line application with its artifacts stamped, which is pretty sweet. But what I love about DevOps, how they split these up, which we did not have in Jenkins many years ago, is the splitting between building pipelines and release pipelines. And it's very important to stick to those two, the way they define these. So releases, they say, oh, cool. This guy is responsible for creating the artifacts, and that's what I did. We have an artifact, regardless of on which OS, which device, in which environment or infrastructure is going to run. We don't care. This guy here, I want to take those artifacts, and I'm going to release them. So, check this out. I created two pipelines, one for QA and one for prod. This one here is hooked up to stage QA. At the moment, it doesn't do much. It just opens a hello world on that environment. But the important part I want to show is, look when my commit came to develop. So I have this hard coded to always run develop branch. If you see here, I have CD incorporated hard coded to develop because I want my develop release always to run off of this one. But you can do unofficial releases. I'll show you that now. But very important, what I want to show you is once I run this release, and this is where the beauty comes in. And I'm hard coded to a specific artifact, specific version at that point in time. If you look at the logs, initialize job, the variables it kicks out, which is similar to that JSON I showed you, which is really freaking cool. This build number here, that guy. Now you have access to this in your environment variables. All of these are environment variables. You can talk to this guy. You can grab this guy, and you can inject it however you want to. You can re-zip your artifacts, for instance. If let's say your zip is actually what goes to the end customer. rezip it and put it in that name, for instance, if you want to. Tag your containers with that version if you want to. That's literally the artifact you're pointing to. And that's the point I wanted to show. And then just quickly, because we are running out of time. Let's say I want to do unofficial release. I'm not sure if Jark is in this call, but normally for my QA releases, let's say I want to quickly release not develop branch. Quickly doing something as a feature. I can quickly, as simple as this, create a new release. I'm going to select that branch. Where's that branch? There. I don't think I ever pushed that branch. But normally what it will do is it will name the release with the name of the branch you're coming from. If you're still in the feature, earlier today I had a feature called 2. But for interest sake, I can also do the hotfix quickly. That beta, for your interest sake, if you look at this picture, the suffix beta gets added to both purple and yellow points. I'm one step away from hitting master. This is where betas come in. So orange alpha, these two here betas, and obviously these are pure, no suffixes. So this is how you get your beta builds. So to unofficial release, I want to select that beta, that hotfix we just did. I'm going to ship this off to the respective environment. As you can see, this is how you do unofficial release. It's not hard-coded because this is hard-coded to develop, but I can do unofficial release and take those artifacts and ship them to that environment. How do I take this environment variable? Because I already showed you guys, I have environment variable. How do I take that and apply it to my artifacts? On the UI side, this is Angular application. It's really simple. It's a simple string manipulation.
You have separate repos for your front end and back end in this scenario?
This
or is it
one,
same repo?
This one, I think, is the same repo, the specific project. But I do kick off builds. If you have a look here, I only kick off builds if the respective thing change. So only if the UI change, kick off. Don't be kicking off the UI if the backend change, for instance. And this, lastly, it's a really easy, this is on Linux now, a string manipulation. Go look for the specific file. This is actually, this is on TS. Go look for the specific file, look for a specific string. In this case, I have it hooked up to a variable, and replace it with my SemVer version, which is that same one I mentioned before, which is literally this one here. Take this string, and the C# is the same thing. You can also do that, or you can use that MS build that automatically tags for you. And you can literally use that and read your DLL, and like I have a controller that actually reads that DLL and then publish that in your about endpoint to kind of tell you about your API and tell what version it's running on. You can literally read your own assembly, which is really cool. They actually have that in the documentation as well. Cool. Yeah, thanks guys. That's all I wanted to show.